everyone, today's video is going to be another why I'm not going to buy it. And so what I do with these videos is I find a product that I really want. So I don't do these videos about things that I'm not interested in because I'm not interested in it and I'm not tempted by it. And so I find something that I see it on Trendwood and I'm like, ooh girl, I need it. And I am on a no buy, so that's part of why I do this. But also I think it's really easy to see things and you're like, oh, that's cool, I need it. But you might have things that are really similar in your collection. And I want to be clear with this because I did one of these videos recently and somebody, and I've had it in the past too, was like, your dupes are not the exact same. And she was like, this cool idea, but these aren't the same. And you're right. These might not be exact dupes. The point of this video is not to be like, here's exact dupes of these products. Sorry, y'all, this is distracting. This side, just look at this side of my makeup, okay? Because this side is not blended at all, and I spent like 10 minutes trying to do it, and it just wouldn't do it. So we're just gonna pretend like I should have just worn an eye patch. I should have worn an eye patch. So look at this side, ignore this side because I know it looks bad, and it's distracting me. So it might be distracting you. But it's not to find you exact dupes, it's to find things that are close enough. Because that's the other thing. If you go into a store and you swatch something and you're like, this is half a shade more green than something else that I already have, I can buy it. Which you can. Like, I'm not telling you you cannot buy things. Like, it's your own life. It's your own finances. You do you. But a lot of times things like that look really similar on the face. They might look slightly different in a swatch, but on the eyes, they look the exact same. And I know for me personally, I don't want to have a bunch of stuff in my collection that is really redundant. If I come and I see a palette and I truly don't own anything that will give me that look, that's one thing. But when it's something that I'm like, I have things that are really similar, I just feel like you don't need it. So that's kind of the goal, is to look through. I'm going to show you what things that I have in my collection that are similar. You may or may not own these things. You may be like, I really wanted that. You think this palette's similar. Maybe I'll buy this palette. Or you might be like, you know, I don't have this palette that you're talking about, but I have something else. So it's just a way that I think you should, what I do, and I hope it's helpful, and maybe you should do it too. This is how I decide what to buy when I'm not on a no buy. So I'm talking, obviously you can tell from the title, the Melt Radioactive palette. So I've never tried Melt Cosmetics, but I know people love their eyeshadow formula. I've seen a lot of reviews on it and they're pretty much all positive. I will say that I've seen Tara Babies and Kat from Kit Schnitch talk about how the powders after some time will like puff up. So that already makes me a little bit nervous about purchasing this palette. I'm not saying it definitely happens or it happens to everybody, but I've heard them say that it happened to them. And like one lives in Australia, one lives in, is it North Dakota? I don't know. So there's not like, you know, they're not colluding or anything. So I know that happens, which makes me slightly nervous about purchasing it. But besides that, we're going to talk about the shades. It's a rainbow palette, and I know so many rainbow palettes have come out, and as you're going to see today, I've purchased a lot of rainbow palettes, and I'm not saying this formula isn't beautiful, and I'm not saying these shades might not be slightly different than things you own, but the general deal is a rainbow palette is a rainbow palette is a rainbow palette. If they're, like, this is a true rainbow palette. It's got, you know, a pink, an orange, it doesn't have a red. It's got a pink, an orange, a yellow, a green, a light blue, a dark purple, and a light purple. So like, you know, you've got a spectrum here, and it's really pretty. And like I said, I'm really interested in it. I think it's hard to tell based on the swatches and the pans. So it looks like these three are matte. This one's shimmer. So it looks like and those two are shimmer. So what, there are 8 shades in all? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like there are 3 shimmers and 5 mattes. That's what I'm thinking. There's the swatches. It's kind of hard to tell, but I think this light green and the 2 purples are shimmery. I'm sorry, this like sea foamy green and the 2 purples are shimmery. That's what I think. So I saw it and I knew I immediately wanted it. And I said, all right, let's go through your collection. What do you have that's similar? So first we have the Too Faced Chocolate Bonbons palette. That sea foam that's in this palette is really similar to the shade Blue Raspberry. This blue raspberry shade is so good. I'm just gonna tell you. You know, you see the similarities. We've also got a hot pink in here. Now this is shimmery. This one's not the best hot pink, I'll be completely honest, but we've got one. We've got a dark purple and a light purple, similar. We've got an orange, So you've got a bunch of the shades, you know, 5 of the 8 shades you can kind of have represented in this palette. So depending on what you're interested in, if you're like, you know what, I will never wear a lime green, I'm not going to do it. Well, this palette doesn't have a lime green. Now this is obviously limited edition. I actually think every palette except for one I'm talking about is limited edition. That's what I like to buy. That's what I own. So just take that with a grain of salt if you're like, I don't own that palette. Well, you might not own this exact palette, but maybe you have a seafoam shade in your palette, in your collection, that you're just not thinking about, you know, because you see something new and you're like, well, I need it right now. Next, I think this is a really obvious comparison, the Urban Decay Electric palette. So if we look, hot pink right here, orange right here, yellow and lime green right here, though this is not really a true yellow, this is like a really like kind of a chartreuse. We've got a lime green. We don't have a seafoam. We don't have that, oh, we do have that like dark greeny blue in the shade Fringe, a dark purple and a light purple. You have this dark purple right here. You don't really have a light purple. Now these aren't the exact same matte and shimmer. Neither are the Too Faced ones. So if you're like, I really want a matte hot pink, well, this actually is matte. But a lot of people like feel like own this palette. It's no longer available. It's a decent palette. But it's definitely, to me, one of the first like hardcore rainbow palettes that came out. I know people have mixed feelings about Urban Decay. I feel like you can say that in this day and age about any makeup brand. I still really like the quality of what I have tried. I think they're really good. So there's that palette that I already have that's really similar. I'm sure this is not a surprise to anybody. This is the Urban Spectrum palette. This was like on sale for like over a year, it seems like. So I do feel like a lot of people own this. Okay, so obviously hot pink, orange, yellow, green, dark blue, light or dark purple, light blue. Now you don't have that kind of tealy greeny blue because this shade 100 is really just like a hunter green. Whereas I do feel like this teal shade, what is that called? What is it called? Meltdown is like a true teal. Based on the swatch, it doesn't seem like it's just a dark green. So you don't have that teal. And if you're like, girl, I really need that teal, don't worry, we're gonna get there. But this is a rainbow palette. This is a true rainbow palette. We've got a lot of different shades. Again, the finishes aren't the exact same. There's a lot of shimmer in here. So like the dark purple and the light purple are shimmery, just like the other palette. All of like this hot pink is shimmer, not matte. These oranges are all 3 shimmery. This yellow is matte. This lime green is shimmery. So there you go. So they might not be the exact same, but they're similar. And again, that's the goal. The goal isn't to give you an exact dupe. The goal is to be like, I have this. Am I going to use that so much over this? Probably not, because I love this palette. And then I thought of this palette too. This is the Kat Von D Pastel Goth. Now, as far as the exact shades, you're not getting the same thing. You've got a matte yellow, and this matte yellow, on it, I mean, it's decent. I did a whole video about my yellow shadows. So like it's a pretty good matte yellow, though I do think the Melch Cosmetics one looks a lot brighter and more vibrant, whereas this is a pastel yellow, hence the name Pastel Goth. So these are not the same. I'm not trying to say that. These are definitely a more pastel take on the Radioactive palette. But if you're looking for that, if you're like, this is a little much for me, maybe you have the Pastel Goth and that'll get you that look. Again, a really true rainbow palette. And when I say that, obviously the entire rainbow is not represented here. There's no red. Red is a color of the rainbow. But you know, a really true multicolored palette might be more accurate. So not the same. I'm not trying to say they're the same, but I do think depending on what you really want from that melt palette, this might be a better way to go. Another Urban Decay. This is the Urban Spectrum palette. I love this palette so much. So this does not really have an orange or yellow. But your purples right here. Your teal shade, look at those two. I mean, they're shimmery. But look at that. They're stunning. And they're so, as you can obviously tell, incredibly pigmented. Your purples, you definitely got those in here. Though this Omen is like a duochrome, which I think is really pretty. And you've got a hot pink. So again, you do have some neutrals in this palette that you do not have, because the Radioactive palette has no neutrals at all, as you can tell. But you do have some neutrals here. So again, not the same, but depending if you really like the greens, maybe you have this palette and you don't really need to buy that for those teals, because that teal, that Meltdown shade, I think is stunning, but so are these two. And now these are shimmery, where I think this one is matte based on the pictures only. I obviously don't have the palette, but you know. Another palette that came out really recently that's still, this one is still available to my knowledge. This is the Anastasia Riviera palette. So, hot pink, seafoamy color, purple. This is kind of a light purple. I don't know. These two pull really cool tone to me. I love it. I like this palette a lot, but I'm just saying, so this is not as colorful. But if you think that you might not use all these colors, and instead you kind of like the mix of these shimmers and mattes, and you do have some neutral shades, like this whole quad is pretty neutral, and this dark purple is pretty, or dark brown is pretty neutral, that can really round out a shade. If you're like, because I know even me, obviously I wear a lot of color, but I do sometimes have a hard time with a full rainbow palette rounding out my whole look. I like a matte brow bone highlight. I like a transition shade, and sometimes you don't really get that in a lot of rainbow palettes, but you have that in this palette. So this is not the same by any means, but it is another colorful palette, but it's got some of those neutrals to round out your look. Now, when we're talking about a neutral colorful palette, a colorful palette with neutrals, you know I gotta talk about my Kat Von D Vida Loca. I know people don't like Kat Von D. I'm not really a Kat Von D fan anymore, but I've got to be honest with you, anytime I pull this out, I still really love it. Hot pink, orange, yellow, lime green, a teal. This is not really a seafoam, a dark purple and a light purple. So you've got all the shades available except for that seafoam. But this is really, really stunning. Again, you've got those neutrals to really fully round out your look, so you're not sitting here like, what am I going to use in my crease? What am I going to do for my full look? If you are the kind of person that likes to just go into one palette, this is a great one. And I would like to say I don't like it anymore, but I've pulled it into weekly products pans, and every time I'm like, it's still stunning. It's still beautiful. Another palette, if you're like, girl, all of those are expensive. This is $5 or $6, I think. This is cheap as chips, as people say. It's the Beauty Treats 24 matte palette. It's not a matte palette. This is what I have on my eyes today. And it kind of bums me out because I've worn it all week, because this is my weekly product pan item. And I'm going to be honest, when it came in, I was like, or when I pulled it, I was like, I might be able to declutter this. I cannot declutter this because I've worn it all week. It's Friday, and I love every single look I've come up with it. This is a stunning palette. These neutrals are kind of shit, honestly. They're not the best. But these colorful ones, spot on. This yellow, beautiful. This light blue, best light blue I have in my collection. This teal, absolutely amazing. Wore it on my eyes yesterday. I've got these two pinks and this orange on my eyes today, and again, it's not blending over here, but over here it looks nice. I don't know. I still don't know what's going on with that. So these colors are really, really stunning. This is a super cheap palette. If the Melt Cosmetics is just way out of your price range, I think you can get a really similar look here. You've got your hot pinks, you've got an orange, you've got a yellow, you've got a lime green, and this lime green does show up lime green. It doesn't, like, I wore it 2 days ago. It does show up. You've got a teal that's really nice. You've got a dark purple. You don't have a light purple. This is called the 24 matte palette. They're not all matte, but they pretty much pull matte in my experience. But yeah, I really like this palette, and I think it's so good, and it's so cheap. So I think you'd be happy with that. Then I pulled in this guy, but I don't really know. This is the Urban Decay Alice Through the Looking Glass palette. So we've got the pink. You do have a nice seafoam and a nice teal in here. Though this Bandersnatch shade, this teal, it can be really patchy. I mean, it swatches absolutely stunning. It does look like the Milk Cosmetics one is a little more green. See, it's hard to build up. Like, if you try to build it up on itself, it can get really patchy really quickly. So it's not the best shade, I'll be honest. and you've got a dark purple. So this doesn't fully encompass that palette by any means, but again, it's got a lot more neutrals. So if you're like, I just want like a couple of pops of color, this is a good option. Though it's not available anymore. You might be able to find it on Poshmark, or you might just have it. That's really why I was mentioning it. If you're like, that teal looks really unique, you might have something similar. And last but not least, again, another rainbow palette, the Smashbox Masterclass Volume 4 Art Love Color Palette. You know, pinks, orange, greens, no yellows, blues, purples. You've got it all. Again, you've got some grays. These two lines are really similar to me, and you've got your brown, so you do have some neutrals to kind of round out your whole palette and your whole look. So another really nice palette. Some of these shades, I will just completely admit to you, are pretty disappointing, but some of them are absolutely stunning, and the cheek products in there are really good too. So there you go. It might not be the exact same. You might not own any of this, and you might not own anything like it. I'm not telling you cannot buy the Melt Radioactive palette. It's a stunning palette. I'm just trying to, you know, let everyone be aware that you might have some things that are pretty similar. You know, this is stunning. These are all beautiful shades, and I own them all already. So, you know, bringing in more things, just, you might not need to. Another thing is, I've been doing a lot of project pans. If you follow my channel, you may know makeup takes forever to use up. I'm just being honest. It takes so long. So if you've got, you know, I understand the draw, like, yeah, you know, I've got a seafoam green really similar, but what if I use that up and then I'll have another? Honestly, it's unlikely you're going to use it up. And if you do, by the time you use it up, there'll be something else that's even better, or, you know, a little more unique, or you might be sick of that shade. It's just the way, especially in today's world, the makeup industry is coming out with things so quickly. Every time you turn around, there's a new palette. So it's just something to think about. Again, I'm not saying that it's a crap palette or anything. I just know that even if I wasn't on a no-buy, I've got so many things that are really similar to it that I don't need it. And maybe the same thing can go to you. So hopefully you found that helpful. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, if you have any questions, requests, suggestions, or comments, go ahead and leave those down below, and I'll just see y'all real soon. Bye.